Jujutsu Kaisen has one of the greatest antagonist casts in anime manga, with different characters who provide different roles in the story. Currently we have our two main antagonists in Sukuna and Kenjaku, controlling the current narrative. But today, I will be deciding who is the best antagonist in Jujutsu Kaisen, whose story is currently completed and played a significant role in the narrative. We will have an updated version when Jujutsu Kaisen is finished. At number 5 is Jogo, the volcano curse of the disaster curses and the initial leader of the group. Jogo is an underrated character who served for one of the key conflicts of Jujutsu Kaisen of humans versus curses. Jogo's ideology stemmed from curses being the true humans, due to the negative emotions of humanity is the truest reflection of humanity. He's also my favourite Gojo and Sukuna victim. And well, he was called weak by Gojo, and Sukuna told him, the moonlight's illumination makes it easier to see how pathetic you are. All I'm saying is personally I wouldn't let someone talk to me like that, but it all does not mean that Jogo is weak, and he gets pretty underrated by getting slapped up by two of the strongest characters in the series. However, he ended up having one of the most beautiful conclusions, with "Stand proud, you are strong," and his conclusion with the disaster curses were wholesome. He represented something about the hypocrisy of humanity, but he lacked the ambition to take a hold of his plans, and he ended up setting up the table for the real leader of Mahito, who ended up stealing the show from the disaster curses. My biggest critique of Jogo is he did not have a direct person to challenge his ideals like Mahito had Yuji. He had instead realizations from his two main fights, with humility from Gojo make him not only use his domain against Sukuna and realize he was a big fish in a small pond till he met Gojo, and the lack of motivation to achieve his goals from Sukuna, as he did not have the desire to reach the heights of the Gojos and Sukunas, and in essence that could explain why he fell short in reaching his ideals. However, I believe someone closer to his level, contrasting with his ideals, would have elevated Jogo as a character, but for the most part, Mount Fuji is underrated. Number 4, Andrew Tate, the top tier misogynist and fraud clan head. All that aside, Naoya Zenin is an interesting character and was the perfect opponent for Maki. They paralleled in their ambitions to become clan head, and with Maki wanting to restore a clan filled with hatred that caused her to be an outcast, Naoya wanted to fulfill what he believes he was rightfully owned because he was a genius. One of my favourite moments from Naoya is the kid Naoya talking about Toji, saying how pitiful must he look, how awful must he feel, that a man was born without curse energy, yet saw Toji and got hit with his conqueror's haki frozen in place. This was the first realization to Naoya that talent can be shown outside the very thing that makes him a genius, cursed energy. So then his same HR being is born being the same person he has bullied throughout his life, and he felt the need to spite her to dick ride his number one guy Toji, acknowledging another person that might be ahead of him, and a woman of that, sent Naoya to a point where he deluded himself to stand with Goji and Toji was only meant for him. Now, in tandem with the aspirations of Clanhead, and the irony of it being fitting that it was given to Megumi, a person who did not care about the clan duties while I was also Toji's son, you could sympathize with his initial Shibuya antics due to how it was set up. However, after being humbled and comes back as Cursed Kuchi to haunt Maki, and well, this is where we insert some Buddhist themes, and you should check out a great video from Enemy Stan user who can explain his whole purpose for coming back. But for me personally, this guy stunk up Sakura Jumo, and the man was flying in the air with one of the most broken curse techniques to get one slash. How pitiful. But overall, Naoya is a charismatic dickhead who had some of the funniest moments in the series. Him laughing at his siblings about Nabito dying, and how he contrasted nicely with Choso on their values on the importance of sibling bonds, shaped up for a great character that you wanted to hate. He was the perfect obstacle for Maki to overcome, and he signified the loss of the Zenin clan and their ways of thinking, which sets up Maki to usher in a new age of the Zenin. Number 3, Geto. A perfect example of the hero complex gone wrong. And when your beliefs get shot in front of you, literally shout at Toji. It leads you to find it leads you to finding something new or completely losing your resolve. In this case for Geto, he ended up losing his initial resolve of protecting the weak and began to solve the root cause. His descent into madness was beautifully written, and as crazy as he is, you can feel sympathetic to the story because he had the right idea but wrong execution. We're introduced to Geto as the partner in We're the Strongest title with Gojo, and both with conflicting opinions of what it means to be a Jujutsu sorcerer, they share a genuine friendship that is also binded by their strength. Geto sees Gojo for more than his strength, which is the criteria he's judged on, and Geto his true companion that he can trust even when they disagree on things. Gojo becomes the honored one, and Geto descends into madness, in the monotonous everyday life of being a sorcerer of exercising curses. So when the opportunity arises, with the death of Haibara and the treatment of the two girls in the town, he takes it to break free from the constant cycle of being a Jujutsu sorcerer. His plan ended up being eliminating all non-Jujutsu sorcerers in the name of justice. In practice, it works, and it prevents the root cause of this never-ending cock cycle of being a Jujutsu sorcerer, but morally is pretty messed up. Hotai Eren Yeager. This leads to one of the greatest lines in the series, and are you the strongest because you're Gojo Satoru, or are you Satoru Gojo because you are the strongest? Geto believes the power Gojo has can change the corrupt world they live in, and ends up stripping Gojo of the one person who saw his worth beyond strength, but is rooted in his own weakness of lacking the power to fulfill his ideals. Geto is a phenomenal character, and Heaven Editory in particular showed the greatness of his character. Ado Geto was pretty cool, but in my opinion, seeing Geto as a fully fledged antagonist would have done so much more for his character. In my opinion, it was a shame it was so short lived in Volume 0. Number 2. Toji, the Sorcerer Killer, and the perfect foil to Gojo, the honored one versus the disgraced one. And I have a whole video in the works on Gojo versus Toji, so I don't want to deep dive too much in case it will be a copy pasta, but Toji is the perfect example of a character with limited screen time but impacts transcends the whole story. From foreshadowing of the next HR user of Maki, being the literal wildcard to the power system of having no curse energy, the losing of his name to provide himself validation, which ended up causing the downfall of something as simple of Toji disregarding his last name of Zenin to be an assassin, does wonders for his characters because the Jujutsu world judges you by your status and power. But because Toji does not fit into that framework, he is not acknowledged, which led to his eventual demise of trying to spite the system that didn't validate his strength. The first breaker of fate, and the closest to the freedom of Jujutsu sorcery, and the impact on the narrative is second to none. Not only does it set up beautifully for Maki, who is currently the only person to truly be free from cursed energy. Like I said, he's arguably the person who's impacted the narrative the most, and it may be a little of an exaggeration because there's a certain body hopper who could be even more impactful. But his final conclusion, with meeting his son, feeling satisfied that he took up the name of Fushiguro rather than Zenin, showcases everything Toji is about. And he's also raw as hell, and dropped one of the coldest lines, even with all your blessed talents, you lost to a monkey like me with no jujutsu.
That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
I mean, he's the GOAT. What can I say? But I'm gonna cut this Toji section shorter than usual because I want to save my major analysis for the Gojo Toji video. So yeah, number 1, the GOAT, the realist, he did nothing wrong, Mahito. But for reference, between Mahito, Toji and Geto, whoever you got first is more than valid, as they're all phenomenal characters who impacted the series greatly. Mahito is a good example of positive nihilism. And hold on, let me quickly put on my glasses for this analysis so you can really get into my analysis bag about the nihilism. Positive nihilism is the belief that there is no underlying meaning to life from a perspective of hope. It's not that we're doomed to live in a meaningless universe, it's that we get the chance to experience ourselves and the universe we share. In the light novels in particular, Allegory of Darkness section. And shout out Liv Harder, who does great audiobooks on all the chapters and has allowed me to basically take in the light novels without actually reading. This is the best example of positive nihilism in Mahito's character. As he walked through the city, he lived with the mindset of embracing everything around him. He found humans humorous, that all of the open space they would limit themselves to the world around them, not even taking how infinitely large the sky truly was. He stated that humans receive external stimuli, which caused them to run like machines, constantly searching for outside validation, which led them to be affected by judgment of others and seek meaning in their life. In essence, they stunted their own freedom. Mahito contradicts his thesis on numerous occasions. One, his constant soul searching to find inspiration on his growth. His lack of fear of death, rather accepting is a natural process which allows him to grow in near-death situations to constantly evolve. His own curiosity being the forefront of his desires, while he ends up being so different to people such as Jogo, as his satisfaction stems from his own growth and whatever his life wants to be. It makes the process of death to become a growth mechanism for him to be devoid of attachments. But this is where Yuji comes in. Not only does these characters parallel beautifully, it highlights that Mahito isn't devoid of death as we thought. Once he reaches his climax of a character, he becomes the hunted instead of the hunter, and chooses to run away from death, clinging on to the last helping hand of Kenjaku before he gets Uzumaki Pokeballed. But the journey of a character who saw the attachments of humans as foolish, ended up being attached to his own very life. Mahito is the perfect representation of the worst traits of humanity, but his role in the story was done perfectly for the greater conversation of curses versus humans. More than just that, he managed to shake every person he interacted with their ideals on life, whether that is the body versus the soul with Kenjaku, whether that is Nanami on his affirmations of being a Jujutsu sorcerer, Todo and his development of what it means to be a Jujutsu sorcerer and how he overcomes even trauma. And then mainly with somebody such as Yuji, who ended up overcoming his main savior complex to accept that initially he is a cog in the system. More than just that, he gave us immense growth, and the Black Flash is some of the greatest moments, being tied to our main character of Yuji, and he's currently the best antagonist in Jujutsu Kaisen in my opinion, and he just gave us the biggest combination of raw moments, emotional impacts, hatred if you hate him, and in my personal opinion, he is the GOAT. But that will be my top 5 of completed antagonists. I do believe Kenjaku and Sukuna will be our 1 and 2 by the end, and whether you have them ahead of them right now is more than valid. I personally do have Kenjaku ahead of some of these people, however I will be saving these people for later on once their stories is complete. But let me know your thoughts. What is your personal top 5? Obviously, I let go on people such as Choso, etc., Higuruma, all those people who are great, but I just don't think they had enough time to impact the narrative as similar as them. I guess maybe Higuruma and Choso did, but I just didn't want to add more people. But thank you guys for watching, and make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe.